So this is Conspiracy 420 episode 54. We got one of our biggest guests, Mark Sargent, an expert in flat Earth.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How about you? And thanks by the way for having me.
No, thank you for coming on. It's an honor, man. Believe me.
Nah.
I'm really glad you came on, and we've been excited about this for about 2 weeks now.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So, how's Whidbey Island, where you're from?
Whidbey Island is good. Hang on, let me put on my headphones.
Okay.
All right, that's a little better. The Whidbey Island's good. It's been sunny, but we're up here in the kind of the middle of nowhere, so the virus thing hasn't affected us like the major cities. Where it's a rural island.
Wow. Guys, can I tell you, I have taken the ferry from in Seattle to go to the island before.
You really?
Because I've been to Seattle. I went to the Freeman Troll. I went to somebody that works at Starbucks. Got like a big property out there in that island, so we had to take the ferry. And the ferry still let cars in, which I was surprised.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way they can get there, right?
Yeah. There's only so much restrictions. Like on this island, they've taken it down to one ferry on the weekends.
Wow.
We have two that usually cross paths, and they've reduced it to one. I know it still goes multiple trips a day, but it's
one boat doing everything. You're saying,
yeah,
right?
one boat doing everything to this island. It's like, all right, it's fine. We'll deal with it.
So, basically, I want to introduce you to our fans. Okay, we have here Mr. Mark Sargent, who for the last few years has been basically a driving force in the flat Earth theory, and we've been doing this Conspiracy 420 show for I think about a year and a half now, and we've touched on all kinds of stuff. But to be honest with you, the flat Earth thing is something that we just really haven't touched on too much. And you know what? When we got the idea to do it, and I started researching you, Mark, and I mean, it really was like an eye-opening thing. Now, some of this stuff, is out there, like the NASA and the moon landing and all that. That stuff's been around. We've discussed things like that.
Sure.
But the actual, theories of flat Earth and some of the experiments and phenomenon and stuff that kind of like, tries to prove it or does prove it.
Right.
Okay. It's very fascinating. I was in Rob. I was in the iBar today in the back, right, talking with one of the guys, and I realized something. They were like asking about what flat Earth is and what's the beliefs, and I was explaining that, and I kind of said, when you start to really believe this and get your head around it, because it's very hard to get your head around.
Yeah.
You're conditioned your whole life to think the Earth is a globe.
Right.
You're conditioned from like 3 years old, basically.
No.
Okay. Yeah. So that's your whole life, and you start to kind of realize, wow, if I get my head around this, then everything comes crumbling down.
Yeah.
In a way, I don't know. Now I watched your movie, okay,
Yep.
and Mark has a film called Behind the Curve that came out in 2018.
Yep.
Everybody, you can see it on Netflix. It's fascinating.
It was great. It was fascinating. It was great.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. If you could, Mark, just kind of talk about how when you first got into this, how you got your head around it.
Sure. And I was more stubborn than most people, because when I got into it was the summer of 2014, and there wasn't that much content out there.
Right.
And in fact, I even joined the old Flat Earth Society that was based out of Hong Kong, and there really wasn't a lot of material. And 9 months later, I'm sitting in my my apartment in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm just banging my head against the keyboard because I can't figure out how to prove the globe without a shadow of a doubt. I can't do it. And so I went the other way. I went forward and I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to make a series of videos called Flat Earth Clues, put them out on YouTube with all my contact information, my name and my phone number and address and the whole 9 yards, which was a dumb thing to do. And it was, but I wanted people to get a hold of me. I thought, well, I figured what I thought was going to happen was, because I made the series of videos, and the videos just basically said, all right, I can't prove the globe in a court of law anymore. Tell me where I went wrong. Tell me where everything screwed up. And I was really hoping that some academic was going to give me a call and say, all right, here's where you screwed up. You forgot to carry the 2 or whatever it was, and you can go back to your life and you can shut down your YouTube channel. And all of a sudden, people started contacting me out of the woodwork. Not academics, though. These were professionals from all walks of life. This is stuff that they didn't. There was so much stuff they didn't talk about in the documentary. They followed us around for 7 months, but they had to, whittle it down to about 100 minutes.
Yeah.
And so I had people, air traffic controllers and pilots and engineers and all branches of the military. All these people are calling me up. And by the way, the documentary team knew all this. They hated Flat Earth. the people that made this movie
I could tell that they were a little biased. They did think it a certain way.
But it wasn't
it seemed like they were against you a little bit.
Yeah, and it wasn't until the end, by the way, that it was supposed to be just a fairly objective human interest piece. They weren't even going to get into the details, but it's really tough to make a movie without going into the details, scientific experiments. And then all of a sudden, I watched the it came out and it'd been out for a while, and then I finally watched the director's commentary, where the director and one of the producers and the editor, they're sitting there talking, and most of that stuff's pretty boring. It's like, oh, this is how we shot this, and the lighting on this, this is the lens we use. It's like, oh, snooze. And then these guys weren't really chatty to begin with, so it was really one of the worst director's commentary ever. But they got to the point where that 12-year-old kid was at the conference and he was asking me a question while I was on stage, and they all just jumped in immediately and go, this is the moment where we had to take a stand one way or the other. It's like, whoa, what are you talking about? Oh, see, it's all fun and games until kids are involved, right? So if a 12-year-old is asking me a question, I didn't ask that 12-year-old to be in the audience. If he's, well, now you're messing with our future. Yeah, it's like okay. So at that point, they had to spin the movie the best they could. But remember, most of the movie had already been shot, and they didn't have the money to go back and reshoot it. So they did it in editing as best they could and took shots at Jaron and Bob. There wasn't much they could do with me, and the rest of the people they kind of left off easy.
But Mark, that kid came up and pretty much actually the question go, his parents believe in the flat Earth.
Oh yeah.
Thing. So
yeah.
He went in his own free will. Nobody told him go up here and ask this question.
Oh yeah. No, it's way worse than that. I mean, ever since that. In fact, it's funny because the director did that in hopes that it would create a backlash to where parents, wouldn't let their kids because they're going to be able to stop them, right? From looking at that stuff. And I had so many high schools and middle schools and universities call me after that came out because they knew they could talk to me. So, I mean, I literally did interviews with middle schools, with high schools. I wasn't allowed, of course, to go into the classroom because
I was going to ask you that. Have you ever gone into the classroom?
No, it's all video. The teachers, there's only so far they can go because they have to get permission from the administration.
Right.
And it's tough to go to a superintendent and say, oh, yeah, by the way, can we bring in a flat earth advocate into the class? Can you imagine what the parents might do? I mean, I had
against the agenda a little bit, right?
there was the local high school here that I grew up in. They interviewed me outside of school, right? At a park. Okay. Within a golf shot of the actual school. And one of the parents saw it on YouTube, and immediately had the kids pull it as fast as they could because it's like, what are you doing? What you could be doing to your future if all of a sudden a potential employer saw this? Like, really? So yeah, it's very, very polarizing. So
yeah. And one thing with the film that I don't know, it didn't sit well with me was the ending.
Oh no, that was the big shot they took at him.
Yeah.
Where the end. Okay, a couple things with the ending. The ending was, for those of you who haven't seen it yet, where Jaron does his second laser experiment, and it appears that he screwed up. That maybe that there is a curvature, but because when you raise the laser on the one side, he couldn't see it until it was raised up. What we didn't know was that Jaron, God bless him, he had I'm not going to defend him too much because he completely botched the experiment.
Oh man,
he didn't. You know what they say in the entertainment biz? Never do it live the first time. Yes. Always do a dry run. Don't immediately go on. What could go wrong? And so what he had done was he literally brought the film crew up there twice at night and never went during the daytime to see if even had line of sight. And so many people gave him grief after the documentary came out that all of a sudden months later he drives up there. I was really stunned when I watched this. He made a video as he went up there, and he went there during the middle of the day. It's like, oh wow, it's the first time I've been up here during the day. It's like, what? What? You never, he thought that particular tract of land was absolutely flat next to this dike, and it wasn't. It wasn't flat. He did not have line of sight, and he's like, all right, well, better luck next time. And he was the first one to admit, he's like, yeah, never do the experiment first time when the cameras are running, especially a camera. To be fair, no one thought the documentary was going to do anything. Documentaries, people make tons and tons and thousands of films every year that you will never ever see because they don't even make it to film festivals. For example, this is Murphy's Law. We premiered at the Toronto Film Festival in 2018, and they had 3,000 submissions to get in there, and they can only pick 100. Wow. And out of those 100, maybe 10 make a must-watch list, and out of those 10, maybe two or three get purchased.
Wow.
And the producers had no faith. They honestly thought it's like, well, maybe we'll get into a film festival. I think they got into everyone they submitted. And they said, well, yeah, but it's never going to get purchased. It was picked up immediately by Amazon, and then I think YouTube Red, and then finally Netflix and a couple others.
Right.
And when it went to Netflix, nobody thought, it was going to trend on Netflix. It was always in that far left position, like the lead position in documentaries for 6 months. It just kept getting hammered and hammered. Netflix did very, very well with that. I don't know how much they purchased it for. Of course, none of the people in the movie made a dime, but yeah, it was
a lot of exposure, though.
In fact, people asked me. They said, "Would you have changed anything in the movie if you had your way?" And I said, "Well, no." Initially, I would have said yes when I went to the premiere, and I got to see it in a hotel room before anybody else did. And here's the thing though, I sat in studio audiences, theater audiences while it was being played, and I got to see the effect that it had, which was the first 20 minutes of the movie. Most of the people in the audience didn't even think it was real. They thought it was a piece of like docufiction. And there's a now famous story where they showed it to an editor in Los Angeles, one of their friends, and gave him no context whatsoever. He knew nothing about it. Okay. And he watched it. And after he was done, he goes, wow. He goes, where did you get the money for this film? And he's going, what are you talking about? He goes, how much money did you have to pay for all those actors? They played it so straight. And he honestly didn't think anyone in the movie was real. That I was an actor, Patricia was an actor, and everyone was an actor. And they go, no, man, that was all real. And he goes, that conference actually happened. And it's like,
I could see that conference happen. They got comic book conference. Why wouldn't this happen?
Yeah, exactly. Great. Oh, in fact, the media, but most people don't know, when you have a conference like that, which is really, really weird, the media will send like a scout team, like usually one guy or a woman, and they'll send one person out there to see if it's real. And I saw these recon teams from all the networks that were there, and they immediately, within like an hour, got on the phone. It's like, oh yeah, you got to send a team like right now. And so by the time the next morning, we had all these camera teams. I remember I was wearing like 3 hot mics at once. Wow. I literally did not know. There's so many cameras everywhere because everyone was it was the first one ever, and everyone was just fascinated with it.
Wow.
And just snowballed from there.
But, getting back to my original question, Mark, when you first wrapped yourself around this idea, did you feel like, I'll be honest with you, because I'm almost there. Okay.
Yeah.
You feel like, nothing is true. Nothing is true.
Oh, yeah. You had to, if you can get your head around this is one of the brilliant things about Flat Earth. You have to revisit every conspiracy you ever looked at.
Yeah,
it is the ultimate. It's the ultimate eye opener, or red pill, whatever.
Because to me, Mark, it was like when I first, I'll be honest with you. There's been times in my life where I heard like flat Earth. Oh, you're freaking crazy. Yeah, that's ridiculous. But then when I really started looking at it, and then you start questioning, well, you know, if they're able to pull this off,
right,
for centuries,
yeah,
okay, basically, then what is real? Okay.
Oh yeah,
And then you're like, you got, like you said, you got to revisit every conspiracy theory, and you know, like the moon landing, for instance, which is, you know, one of the biggest ones.
yeah,
You look at the lunar module,
yeah.
and you go, there's no way you could even walk that thing across the street without it breaking.
Exactly.
Okay?
That's good. I know it.
Right?
I've never heard it put that way, but you're
Yeah.
absolutely right.
I mean, you know, it looks like if you lean on it, it's going to fall apart. So
yeah, it's like a homeless tweaker
yeah,
shelter.
right.
It's
So, you know, you got to wonder, how did that thing fly through space and then land
right.
and take off?
You know how it flew? You know how it flew through space? Because it was on TV.
Right.
And that is something, in fact, we're seeing it now, and I don't necessarily want to diverge into the whole virus.
I do want
Oh my God. Right now we're going through a weird time.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
but
we are going to get into that. I just want to say one thing, because
yeah,
with the landing, okay?
Yeah.
The thing that sold me on it, that it was faked. And I didn't know this until when I was doing the research with your shows and everything, is that I didn't know that NASA told the major networks that they could not have a live feed. See, I remember always seeing old videos of old clips of, you know, Walter Cronkite sitting there at Mission Control. I thought that that's just how they did it. I didn't even think like, okay, they should have had a live feed.
But they had to be there.
They had to be there. Right.
Yeah.
I thought that's what they wanted. But, but NASA was the one that wanted that.
Yeah, for those who are listening who don't know the context of what we're talking about here, it's the only time ever in media history where the networks were not given a live feed to a major event, where basically NASA says, oh yeah, we're not going to give you the feed that we have. You have to literally come down to Mission Control. We will put it up on a big screen, and you have to film it second generation with your cameras.
Wow.
And yeah, you can imagine, right? You know, the studio's going, "What are you talking about?"
But they agreed to it. Okay, obviously.
Well, they had no choice.
Yeah, they had no choice at that time.
Yeah, if you don't come down and film it second generation, you're not going to film it.
Yeah, and
so
they had to do it. So they had.
In fact, it was because of that. Because of that reason, because that's the reason why it was so freaking grainy. That's the reason Capricorn 1, the movie, was made.
Yeah, I remember that.
Because the studio, the guy from CBS who was watching, you know, it being piped through finally through his studios, going, I could make a better moon movie than this. You know what? I could make a better Mars mission than this.
Right. That's a great.
And he did. And he did. But while he was making it, he realized how easy it was to fake things.
Yeah.
And in fact, now you couldn't even get Capricorn 1 made, I don't think. But back in 19...
Do you think that Stanley Kubrick did it?
He's the most likely suspect, and here's why. Because he was I don't think it's a myth or a legend. He was given 5 years to make 2001: A Space Odyssey, and the government, from what I understand, wrote the checks. You know, he had basically carte blanche as far as access to everything that NASA had. And I think what they were doing was they went to him and they said, look, we need to find out what can be created on film. You know, what sort of space things. And the money is no object. I mean, seriously, no studio is going to let somebody, especially back then, take 5 years to make a movie.
Right.
And his thing was, well, when I'm done, can I keep the footage and release it as a film? It's like, yeah. Sure, why not?
Wow.
And it won Best Picture of the Year, and even in Blu-ray, even now, it is gorgeous.
Oh yes,
it's one of my favorites. That's a beautiful film.
It's one of my favorite. I'm a big film buff. It's one of my favorite films, but not because of plot.
Because no.
Because you could sit there, and drink a case of beer, and it doesn't. Okay?
It's pretty slow.
It's because of the way it's shot. The cinematography, okay.
And remember when it came out? It came out in '68, and the Apollo moon landing was in '69.
Yep.
So basically, and it was Best Picture of the Year. Everybody saw it.
Yes.
Right.
And so we filled in the gaps for the moon mission with that film.
There was like a hype, right? You had the film, and then within a year you had the landing, and then the following couple of years of different lunar landings.
Yeah.
There is one thing though that when it comes to the moon landing conspiracy that bugs me, that is the political climate of the time. Okay,
sure.
Obviously, the Cold War was on.
Vietnam.
Russia and us were not friends.
Yeah.
How come if we didn't go?
Yeah.
Okay. How come Russia or say China didn't rat us out? Because they had to be watching, or are they in on it?
Because, well, okay, they exactly at the highest levels. You've heard the term, of course, mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
That's what it really is. Because what you're saying, because remember, it's not just that they could rat us out, and but saying, oh, they're faking the moon mission, because we would come back and because the secondary thing would be like, why are you faking it? Which is how I got into this. Which is okay. I understand, rah rah, wave the flag, go team, America's great. That's why we'd fake it. That's a good answer. It's not a great answer. When I got into flat Earth, it's like, oh crap. We had to fake it, and it would blow the whole thing wide open. They would be in the same boat as us. Oh yeah, they could rat us out, but then it would finally get back to their people. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, you're living in a sound studio, and you don't want to roll those dice.
No.
I used that when I was talking with. In fact, I ran it past. Who's that British journalist? Piers Morgan.
Yes.
He was asking about this, and he's going, "Why wouldn't you tell everybody?" And I go, "Really? You break that story, knowing the shock waves it might send through all of society? You would break?" And he just quieted down right there.
That's
a great answer.
I never thought of it on those lines, so I'm glad you explained that to me.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't either. I wouldn't have released it either to people if I would have known. So no, China can't say anything, Russia can't say anything, and there's money to be made. Because if you set up your own fake space program, you can create jobs and get huge amounts of government funding, and everybody wins, right? The only people that lose is, well, the truth, but it's relative.
Well, listen, there's not a lot of truth going around today.
What I love about you, the way you explain the flat Earth with the Truman Show, which that's fascinating to me. That's brilliant because everybody's seen the Truman movie, right?
Well, most people have. If you're under a certain age, you might not have, because it's 22 years old now.
Wow.
But I know, right? Time flies.
I know.
But yeah, the Truman Show, and I remember seeing that in the theater back in '98, and I was just so impressed.
I saw that in the movies too, so that's what I'm saying.
I was so impressed by the concept, and because Jim Carrey did some great acting, and it was as overall some great performances. But could it be done? And it's like, yeah, absolutely, it could be done. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for the very deliberate production mistakes that they wrote into the script, he would have lived his entire life and never ever figured it out. And same thing with M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.
Oh my God, that's another one.
That's a very good movie.
And they didn't even use any really money to do that. It was just basically a wildlife preserve, but very, very low tech. And all they did was tell the airplanes not to fly over. And it goes into the whole children thing. Children, well, not just children, but adults too. We believe the world that is presented to us, and children don't believe in lies. Right. So if you want to tell your kids, oh yeah, by the way, you're living in the mid 1800s in Pennsylvania, it's like, okay, why would I think otherwise?
They believe what adults tell them. So
yeah.
But it's also going back to the education, the way we're trained, the way we teach. We're programmed to think a certain way and look at the world a certain way, which is something that hasn't changed, because pretty much this is what we've been doing for years. We trained the human eye to, this is what it is, this is what you're gonna get, this is what you should deserve.
Oh yeah.
But what I've noticed like I'm about to be 51, so I graduated in the late 80s.
Yep, me too.
What I've noticed in that time since then is there's this like dumbing down of society to a point where too many people don't want to ask questions.
Right.
Okay. Especially in a educational setting like school.
Right.
Okay. And I think we have a generation now. This is a little off topic, but I think we have a generation now, in their early 20s or whatever, that are the most conforming.
You're absolutely right.
Type where everybody's into the same thing. Everybody has the same clothes. Everybody listens to the same music. Everybody watches the same movies. Everybody has the same ideas.
Yep.
And to me, it's scary, because the generation that's after you as an adult, the ones behind you, I should say, coming up, they're the ones that are supposed to kind of like make the world better than what you did. And
oh yeah,
I don't see it.
No, not now. No, you're absolutely right. As a matter of fact, there's been some wonderful articles written recently about, you know, the not to go into the protests necessarily, but the kids that are on the streets that are voicing their opinions. They know when you finally talk to them, you realize they know nothing about history. They don't even know why they're there.
I know.
Other than it's something social to do that they're allowed to do.
Right. I mean, we talk about this on our show. Okay.
Yeah.
How a lot of these kids really, they don't even know what they're doing. You know, they knock, like, for instance, with the Black Lives Matter protests and everything.
Right.
You know, they're knocking down statues of Ulysses S. Grant.
Right.
All right. And that, I mean, the guy fought to release the slaves. So what do you?
Right.
You know?
Yeah, the northern side. Yeah, no, they're making up any excuse whatsoever. I mean, they were going after the and granted, I had never seen it before. The Emancipation statue.
I didn't know about that either. That statue with the
with Lincoln with his hand over the kneeling slave in tattered rags, and it's like, yeah, it's not the most flattering thing, but you got to remember when it was built, it was actually paid for by the slave, ex-slaves.
Are you familiar with the American Museum of Natural History here in New York?
Yes.
Okay, you know about the Teddy Roosevelt statue
Yes.
controversy? Okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's a statue. I mean, it's been there since the 40s. So I mean, when I was going to that museum on field trips, in elementary school, we all took pictures with it. Okay, we all were like, "Oh, cool, Teddy Roosevelt." Nobody, not an adult, not a person of color, nobody said anything about that statue. Okay, it's only in the last maybe 10 years or so, maybe 15, that we've gotten to this point where we're like bitching about statues. It's just like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hell, most people don't even know that Teddy Roosevelt's on Mount Rushmore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seriously, I go, who are the four people? I go, it's Washington, Jefferson, Lincoln, and people just draw a freaking blank. And
people
I go, it's Teddy Roosevelt.
People don't realize that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Now, one thing with that, is that statue, I mean, the carvings on Mount Rushmore, that was built, I believe, during his presidency, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was, let's face it, the numbers show it out. I mean, I don't know how they would reflect currently. The most popular president in the history of presidents. I mean, he could do no wrong.
Nah, he couldn't do any wrong. He was great.
One of the greatest stories with him that I love is how he was giving a speech one time and somebody shot him with a .22 in the breast pocket.
Really?
And you never heard the story?
No.
Okay, he was giving a speech and he had, he wore glasses, right?
Yep.
He had I believe it was a heavy glasses case, probably made out of metal or something.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And he was giving the speech. He had the papers in his hand. He was reading. The gunman shot him, and it hit him in the breast pocket.
Wow.
Okay. He staggered backwards. They got the guy. Okay, and there was a commotion. He staggered backwards. Guy finished his speech.
Nice.
Finished his speech.
Nice.
And he had a little bit of blood on him, but nothing serious. He finished the speech, and then they took him to the hospital, and he was okay. But the thing, I think it was like a .22 or something, so it was small. Yeah. Okay, but I mean, could you imagine that?
Well, I mean, he was a Rough Rider. He helped create the White Fleet. He, the Spanish-American War hero, and so on and so on. I mean, the man could do no wrong. By the way, I love the way that the protesters didn't even make an attempt at Mount Rushmore. Trump was there. It's like, because they don't go out to rural areas. They stick to the cities.
Well, not in certain cities, Mark.
Yes, and only certain cities. Yeah.
I mean,
like Portland, they just won't leave alone for whatever reason.
I said this on, a couple of our shows is, why don't they come to some of the tougher neighborhoods in Chicago and Brooklyn and the Bronx, okay? Yeah. And they don't go there. Okay, they'll have their asses handed to them, and
absolutely,
it's like, okay, take over 6 square blocks of Seattle.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you're right near Seattle. How did you feel about all that? I mean,
we were not proud. Let's put it that way, because it just wouldn't go away. I think it was kind of an experiment to see how how long you could let this thing go, and if it would. turn into like a Lord of the Flies deal.
Exactly. That's what it was. Lord of the Flies. Let's see how long this goes. I thought that was amazing.
Before they turn on each other, and it didn't take that long. No. Before now, could you have infiltrated it and seen what was going on? Yeah, sure, I suppose. But it's interesting watching the politicians just dance around the issues. Anyway, sorry, we digress.
Right.
Yeah. So, hey guys, let's get back to a little bit of the flat Earth. We have art that we don't get all the time. It's great that maybe we'll do another show where we just talk about politics and everything. But let's talk about the film. Let's get back to a little bit of flat Earth, guys.
All right. What do you want to know?
But let's get back to flat Earth.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Well, okay. The main thing is, for people that don't know, is if you believe in flat Earth, you believe that we're kind of like in a dome, like the Truman Show, right?
Yeah.
Now, the bottom is flat. We're kind of like in a bowl with the ocean, and the continents all lined up pretty much the way we know that they're lined up.
Exactly.
But the interesting thing is that Antarctica is actually a 200-foot wall of ice around the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's way, way, way bigger than it's now. Normally, you'd think that Antarctica is this island continent, roughly the same size of Australia, but instead, so again, the flat Earth would be if you took the North Pole and you just put your hand on top of a globe and you squished it to where all the continents were splayed around the center. So it's like a dinner plate with the North Pole in the center, and then Antarctica stretches all the way around the outside. And the coastline of Antarctica isn't the end. At the edge of the world. It's not like Thor. Thor did us no favors with that whole cosmic water. You're living. It's not Asgard. You're living in a big box, basically a big building with walls and a floor and a ceiling, with a giant saltwater lake in the middle of it and some islands in the middle of that where we live.
Right.
And the beginning of Antarctica, the coastline, is 150, 200 feet up, give or take, depending on where you are. And what's interesting about Antarctica, most people don't know, is that it plateaus up to about 14,000 feet. And most of the continent is very unusual. Even science says that it's about 14,000 feet. There's no animal life. There's no plant life. Altitude sickness kicks in at about 7,000 feet. It's a horrible, horrible place. And from the edge of where the coastline starts of Antarctica, when you hit the beach of Antarctica, to wherever the outer border of this thing is, the edge of the snow globe, the edge of the dome, whatever, it's got to be thousands of miles inland, because the United States Navy looked for it for the better part of 30 years, starting in 1928.
Right.
And they didn't, and then Operation Deep Freeze, which was their last major operation, was 1955-56. And that's when I fully believe they found the outer marker. And then they just locked the whole place down. They said Antarctica is closed.
Yeah. Nobody goes to Antarctica. Why?
Because the Antarctic Treaty. The Antarctic Treaty is the only unbroken treaty in the history of treaties. It is ironclad. It is signed off by a whole bunch of nations. Right. It was initially signed off by, I think, 12 nations.
When was that treaty signed?
When? 1959. Okay. And it basically says that no corporation from any country can set up shop there ever, and no one gets to own any piece of property on Antarctica. It is a joint.
I wonder, just off the top of my head, I wonder if that has anything to do with the Nazis.
Oh, absolutely, it does.
Okay,
I was just you read my mind. I was going to say, have the Nazis been there? Did anything happen?
Oh yeah. The Nazis
did go down there prior to this treaty you're talking about. Now, also, I remember, Rob, we did talk about this when after the Second World War in the early 50s. Okay, there was so many rumors around that Hitler was still alive, or there were Nazis hiding.
Right. The ones that didn't go to South America.
That the ones that didn't make it there. Yeah, that they had some kind of hidden base. Yeah. So much. So there was an actual, like, the FBI were tracking this. Okay, they were tracking it in a way that even they believed that it could be possible that they were down there. Right. So the Navy actually sent a bunch of ships down there.
Yeah.
Okay, I think this was around 51, maybe 50.
Actually, I know this story by heart.
Okay.
So what happened was Admiral Richard Byrd, who went down, the youngest admiral in the history of the Navy, who went to the North Pole in 1926 and then went down to Antarctica in 1928 and was doing missions, looking. And then World War II breaks out and everybody leaves the ice but one country. That was Nazi Germany. And that makes sense because Nazi Germany, Indiana Jones was not just a movie concept. It was absolutely true. If there was something that could help them in the war, I mean, look, all's fair in love and war. If there's something that willing to help them in the war, they don't care how spooky it is. They're going after it. Right. So if the Ark of the Covenant, you know where that is? Yeah, we're going for that. Harry Potter's wand? Sure. The Ring of Power from Lord of the Rings? Yeah. Where can we find that?
Spear of Destiny.
Exactly, Spear of Destiny.
They were still looking for stuff, even though they were losing the war. They still had swords.
Oh hell, well, why not? I mean, if you can find the ultimate weapon that can wipe out a battalion, why not? Right. So they go down there, and they were there during World War II, the entire World War. The myth goes, or the legend goes, that they were building a base down there, and they had found evidence of advanced technology, blah blah blah. And so right after the treaty was signed, the surrender thing in Tokyo, after the Japan side, the Pacific Theater, once that ended, Admiral Byrd, 1946, immediately gets a full carrier group and heads down there. It's called Operation High Jump, not a secret. You can look it up.
Yep.
But they said, oh, it's for scientific reasons. Like, really? You're going to send a full carrier group right after the war's over?
It was fully equipped, scientific.
5,000 infantry. You're going down there for science reasons?
Right.
And whatever happened, no doubt they were going down there to root out the last Nazi base, or at least figure out what the hell was going on. They were going strong. And whatever happened, it was not an issue when Byrd went on television in 1954, only 8 years later, because if there was an issue with the Nazis, it was resolved by then. I've heard all sorts of different stories to where they just hunkered down in a bunker, or they burrowed into the ice, or the one I like better was that an older civilization actually was there, and the Nazis actually requested asylum with them.
Never heard that.
Oh yeah, that's a fun one where it kind of turns into like a high school dance thing where they said, okay, you can request asylum with us, but you can never come back. So Iron Sky, it's a nice idea for a movie. It's never going to happen. That's why, because they said you can come with us, but that's it. You're not coming back.
Mark, so this treaty was signed on December 1st, 1952, but it wasn't enforced until June 23rd, 1961. How come that happened?
I don't know exactly. I mean, that's just it. They were working on it fairly early on, but it wasn't ratified. Everything I saw was the First Nations signed off on it was in 1959. So did they suspect something in 1950? Here's my theory. I think when he went to the North Pole, I think the only reason he was down there from 1928 on was because when he went to the North Pole, he found something so bizarre but so telling about the shape of the world. They said, okay, well, apparently we've figured out one part of it. Let's see if we can figure out the outer edge, which is going to be much, much tougher to deal with than the North Pole. North Pole is just a single point in space, whereas the South Pole, or the southern edge, that's a whole other thing. So I think even early when he got down there, they're like, okay, in case we find it, we'll start ramping up this treaty. And then right after he found it, that's when they had nations start signing off.
Yeah, it was crazy. It's like Argentina, Australia,
Chile,
Belgium, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, even the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and the United States. That's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And remember, the UK and especially the Soviet Union were severely devastated after World War II. Yes, they needed the resources, and they weren't allowed to get them. That's the part. That's why I called it when I was making the clues. I said, look, our world is based on money and power and greed. It always has been, always will be. It's about resources. And yet you're telling me that they locked all that down because there's something down there that's bigger than money. I was like, okay, there's only a couple things I can think of that are bigger than money. And one of them's God. So whatever's down there, I mean, it spooked them enough that they said, yeah, nobody should ever go down there ever, ever, ever. Let's just lock this thing up.
Wow.
They did. Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, human beings break treaties. That's what they do. All the time. It's the running joke. It's like you make a treaty. It's like, oh, how many years before we bust that thing up? Right. It's never. In fact, it's not even up for review now until 2041.
Wow.
Okay. So that's one of the things the UN got right, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, out of necessity, because think of it. If you send a petroleum company down there, let's say you send Exxon. Well, Exxon's got a lot of resources,
Yeah.
right? Say, and you could say, well, you can't go past this area for national security. No, a plane accidentally goes past that area, or a helicopter, or whatever it is. Well, what do? You're going to tie up loose ends.
Right.
And finally, somebody says, you know what? It's not even going to be worth it, because we're going to, sooner or later, people are going to go missing. We're going to have to, we're going to be chasing people constantly. It's just going to get worse and worse. Let's just lock it down. The same reason why they, when they were doing the moon stuff, the Apollo moon landings, why there was never any stars in the shots, because I'm sure they were trying to figure out, because remember, nerds are really good about, especially
what I remember. 1 second, as I remember in school asking that question as a kid.
What?
Okay, why there's no stars?
I remember
that. And the teacher told me it's because there's no atmosphere on
Oh yeah, of course. Why not? That's a good answer. Yeah. I mean, why again, people, the reason why we believe and you get away with what you can is because so many people, when we go through school, you barely make it out alive. Right. I mean, it's like, oh my God, I graduated, thank God. And you forget just about 90% of what you were in there for. We remember nothing about physics or engineering or chemistry or nowadays microbiology.
Right.
And we remember it was kind of like the spacesuit thing. I go, the spacesuit can't work like that. The spacesuit would turn into a parade float and the person would die. In fact, you can look it up. This is not secret stuff. The early spacesuits from the mid-50s were made of heavy plastics and or metals.
They were hard, right?
They were hard. They were rigid. They had to be, because that's how you deal with a vacuum. That's how it works. And somebody along the line said, "Oh my God, this is so clunky. We're going to have to build a capsule that's the size of a city bus." And somebody said, "Wait a minute. Let's make a soft suit. No one will know. And that'll be it. No one will get it." And even the physics people is like, well, it's on TV. It's got to be real. But the rest of the audience is like, so what? They're running around in a soft suit. Nobody gets it. They don't understand what would happen.
If that was in a real vacuum, just so people get it. If what they were wearing, the soft suits, were in a real vacuum, they would have expanded to a point where it would have exploded.
Yeah. But you can go on YouTube anytime you want and type in something in a vacuum chamber: football, basketball, soccer ball, Stretch Armstrong, a soda can. They all detonate. Seriously, watch a Stretch Armstrong, right? And there's
I've broken a few of them when I was a kid, man. That gel inside.
Yeah, which is, by the way, it's a corn syrup.
Yeah,
it's a heavy corn syrup. Yeah. It's actually, what I understand, kind of edible, but I wouldn't recommend it. But everything in a vacuum detonates, and they don't understand, which is again why the ISS. You can look up the fun little videos on YouTube. Type in like a vacuum versus steel rail car. The Germans love doing this. I don't know why. But they'll go and take a steel rail car, not aluminum, and they'll hook up a vacuum field to where the vacuum goes in on the inside, where they suck all the air out of it.
Yeah. And
it crushes like a giant, just hammered it with his fist instantly. It's violent how fast it is. And you're saying, what's your point? I go, my point is how exactly is the ISS doing what it's doing when it's all just aluminum and plastic? How is it surviving up there?
And right. I mean, it would have crushed itself, right?
Well, no, it would have exploded. I mean, there's been this massive pressure difference, massive, and yet nobody cares. Nobody cares. And the movies, there's some things in the movies, this, that are absolutely wrong. And I just cringe now that I think about it. So if there's a pressure difference, like if you get even a nickel that punches through your hull, you're dead. You are dead instantly. It is such a massive pressure difference that all the air is sucked out in 2 seconds. I mean, a fraction of a second, including everything in your lungs.
Right.
You would be dead in seconds. And so when you think about the movie Aliens at the end, when Ripley was climbing up that ladder, right, and it's like all this stuff's whooshing past her,
it would have been over.
It would have been over. It's because in the movies you have to, for dramatic effect. People understand as soon as that airlock is open, it's like, dunk, that's it. The alien's gone, you're gone. Everybody roll credits. It's over.
Yeah.
And in fact, I had a friend in the Navy that was talking to me. He did submarines, and he said people they tell you when you're down there, because you always see the movies about how the water is coming in, and it's like like you're being in a bathtub with the shower running at the same time. That's that sort of thing. And he goes. They tell you up front. They go, nah, it's not like that. the water would come in so amazingly fast if there was a right type of rupture that you would freeze to death long before you would suffocate, or or you would drown.
Right.
You would never. It doesn't work like that. It's way faster than the movies. But
now,
again,
I'm glad you brought up your friend and the submarine, because I did listen to that podcast.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Yeah, most of it. And one thing that struck me, and I don't remember exactly how he explained it. You'll probably remember. Yeah. He said, if I remember right, that in all his years as a submarine commander, he never did, and he never knew anybody that went into the Southern Hemisphere. Right.
Because you can sign up like on a bulletin boards for assignments.
Right.
And people sign up for crazy stuff all the time, and there was he never even ran into a guy, and he was a pretty social guy. The other thing I got to mention real quick, which is the gravity versus the vacuum of space, which is one of my big things. People say, "Oh, well, no, it can't be a flat Earth because of whatever space." I go, really? Tell me how space works exactly. Because when you're sucking a soda out of a glass with a straw, you're creating a vacuum force,
right?
And it's like, I'll say, so why doesn't the soda stay in the glass? You go, oh, because the vacuum force is too strong. I go, perfect. I go, let's say there's a vacuum above you, right? You take a vacuum chamber and you put it in the room above you, and you pop that valve on your ceiling. What happens? It's instant. It's violent. And the pressure equalizes instantly. And you're saying, well, what's the point? My point is like, why didn't the gravity stay in the room where you were? Why did it go upstairs? Why did the atmosphere stay in the room? Why didn't it go upstairs? Or why did it go upstairs? And you say, okay. And I go, so when you go outside, how exactly is our atmosphere here instead of in space? And I actually had a guy come back to me and say, well, because there's so much more gravity. I go, no. It's the same gravity that was in your room. If you can't stop the atmosphere from going upstairs, why is it when you go outside, or is our atmosphere still here? And they say the only answer is gravity. Literally, that's the only answer you have. And I say, no, it's because you're in a pressurized system. You're in a building. There's nowhere for the atmosphere to go.
Right. So there is a clear, I guess it would be clear, dome above us.
I mean, I don't know if it's clear, because at that point, could it be projection? People say, okay, what's it made out of? Yeah, like a planetarium. Could it be a projection, a rear projection type deal? It could very well be. I mean, remember, we haven't even had HD television for 20 years. What could you do with an extra 1,000 years? What sort of tech could you have there? What's the dome made out of? I don't know, heavy element, heavy water, force field, unified field, some high frequency job.
Right.
Take your pick. But whatever was happening, we couldn't bust through it with megaton weapons back in the 50s. So we're not getting through it. And so I think they've been working on, different alternatives like HARP and maybe CERN, trying to work their way around it. But nobody's getting through this thing.
And also, what was it in the early 60s, I think 1960, 61, didn't NASA talk about the Van Allen belts?
Oh, yeah. 1959, actually.
59,
same year the same year the treaty was ratified.
Right.
So
the radiation is so high that you can't pass through that without dying.
Right. And then Kennedy comes in 1960 and said, we are going to go to the moon in this decade and, do the other thing, that whole speech. Yeah. And he says this and screws everybody up. Because now it was like, so they literally went back to Van Allen, the NASA guy. It was NASA that discovered it, amazingly. And he goes, well, we'll have to go through really, really fast. That was his answer. It's like, okay, we're going to hit the gas. It's like, okay. But your best speed, even admitted best speed, is maybe 18,000 miles an hour. These things are supposedly, if you what you say they are, they're 60,000 miles thick. That's a couple hours each way. Remember, you're doing round trips and you're slowing down on the way back.
Right.
So, and nobody died. No, in fact, it's one of my favorite questions, which is, are the Van Allen radiation belts deadly? Yes or no? If you say yes, then how did the Americans make multiple round trips? Nobody died. Nobody got radiation poisoning. Nobody even got cancer. In fact, there's 5 of these guys still limping around today. And if you say, oh, they are deadly or they aren't deadly, then I say, okay, go to the NASA website, nasa.gov, look up a wonderful little video they made called Orion Trial by Fire, where they said that we can't even test capsules with human beings because we haven't solved the radiation problem. It's like, well, what do you mean? You solved it perfectly in the 60s. What are you talking about?
Wow.
You solved it absolutely perfectly. And no one has ever answered that question for me, ever. I mean, it is so straight up, because the only shielding you can use for radiation is gold, lead, and a whole bunch of water. And they only use plastic and aluminum, like the ISS. So there you go.
And another thing about the ISS that bugs me is there is not one picture of it being built.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. You're absolutely right. There is we have time lapses of everything, right? Including like the World Trade Center. We've got time lapses of that sucker getting built from the late 60s all the way through 72. There isn't, you'd think this is the biggest thing we've ever done up in space. We'd have a time lapse, even a CGI, special, enhanced time lapse. No, it is all straight up CGI. There isn't a single aspect of it that is actual photography. It's like, why?
But you notice lately when they've been showing it, okay, because there have been some video clips in the last couple of months. Yeah, you got them wearing masks up there, like they got the coronavirus.
Are you serious?
I saw it.
Yes, they do.
It wouldn't surprise me. There was a story I read just today where a fishing trawler, where they had tested before they went out. They were out there on the water, just them. They never came into shore for 35 days.
Yeah.
They came back, tested positive. And it's like, okay, so how exactly, because if you're going to say that's actually a legitimate thing, then all bets are off. Anyone can get it anytime. And the space people wearing masks, that's just propaganda.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. The space program's always been propaganda.
Oh yeah, always
from the beginning.
But it's also trendy. They try to make it as current. So like when no matter who's in the playoffs, in the NFL playoffs, they always have the jerseys.
Yeah.
And all the other everything they have is current.
They tie it into what's going on.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I saw them wearing masks, and then also the SpaceX thing that went up a few weeks ago, I think it was. Okay. They had them like, the first time it was going to go off, they had to scrub the mission because of bad weather.
Right.
And then they had them, they brought them out, they put them in the SpaceX rocket. They took them down. They had to scrub the mission. They quarantined them away. They made a whole big spectacle of that. Oh, we're going to quarantine them away, for another day or two so they don't get the coronavirus. And then, it's just ridiculous. You would think that these people would be safe, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I never understood the whole scrubbing a mission because of bad weather. I mean, fine, there's a rainstorm. Who the hell cares? Airplanes don't care about rain. They don't even care about snow. Yeah. You get even a threat of rain, and they scrub the mission. It's like, why?
I think it's just a suspense thing.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Back in the day when it was a big deal, one of these launches.
Right.
And you'd have everybody, you know what? We can't do it today because of the weather. Everyone's like,
Oh, yeah. They say, well, it could be lightning strikes. And it's like,
right, if lightning strikes, something.
Hey, where was I leaving off exactly? Oh, the moon stuff. Oh, yeah. So again, why? It's a ballistic missile. I mean, the whole NASA program is based off of weapons technology. It's a really robust rocket. And yet, for the suspense, like, oh, we're going to cancel it because, we saw three seagulls that were, hovering around. It's like, what?
Now, SpaceX did that a few times.
Yeah, well, and NASA used to do, like the space shuttle used to do it all the time, which gets to my next thing here is the space shuttle. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, as a kid, I mean, I remember in '79 when the Columbia went up, and as a kid, I used to make models all the time. So I made models of the space shuttle. It was like the greatest thing, and you think about the Challenger, and if all of this is BS,
then the Challenger astronauts didn't die.
Challenger astronauts didn't die. It didn't happen, and they put the country through a traumatic thing.
Yeah,
I remember kids crying over that, man.
Yeah, well,
not me. I was older, but younger kids.
I was in my first year of university when it came. I remember exactly where I was when it was flashing all over the televisions.
I was a senior in high school when that happened.
And unfortunately, that's one of the the side effects you have to deal with, which, first off, you would never ever put an astronaut on a pile of liquid explosives. That's right. the last thing. It's a missile. I don't care what people say. No, it's based off ICBM technology. That's all it is. So if the rocket blows up, well, then what do you do with the people? Depending on, what movie you watch, then you'd be like, well, we have to kill them, right? Like Capricorn 1. Right. It was interesting. It was interesting because Capricorn 1 was 7 years before that space shuttle disaster. And that's what they were going to do. It's like, well, we got to kill them, but only because they wouldn't go along with the program. With the military, all these guys that are, a lot of people don't know, a lot of people, almost every astronaut is part of the Air Force. They are military straight up. They go through the psychological profiling, and they sign the waivers, and they know full well it's like, you go along with this, and they're of course going to go along with it. And in this case, it's like, well, we'll just put you in witness relocation. There was no internet, not even close. No. So we can put you out there. No one's going to know. You'll be fine. And after you age, in fact, we even interviewed one of them. We've had one of our guys.
Really?
Yeah, we went out to one of the guys' houses, and he you know what he didn't do? The part that bugged me about that, I absolutely think it's him, is he didn't give the alibi. Out of all the things he could have said, first thing you do is, like, if you're being accused of something, first off, he knew full well why our guy was there, even though he didn't know anything about the flat earth stuff. Yeah. But he didn't give his alibi. First thing he would say is what he was doing in 1986. No, instead it's like, yeah, I know I used to look a lot like that guy when I was younger. It's like, okay, you're not helping your case. But what you should have said was where you were in 1986. Right. That's all you had to do. No, in 86, I was smoking weed in Northern California or something like that. But no, he was not. He said nothing along those lines. In fact, he even gave whoever it is, because, well, whoever that guy was, give him a pat on the back. He's a heck of a guy. He was actually giving himself compliments. It was just blowing me away because, like, but yeah, he was a professor at some university, and one of our guys drove out to his house. Sorry, let me go real quick. SpaceX. Yeah. The car in space. A lot of people like bringing up the car in space, the Tesla Roadster in space. Yeah. With that wonderful footage, it had 3 HD cameras on it, and the thing was spinning around and around and around. And there were so many things wrong. Two major things. One was the car was completely intact. There was nothing wrong with it at all. And supposedly this was taken straight from Elon's garage, right? It wasn't retrofitted in any way. It was just, you just put it inside the capsule, fired that thing off there. And with the huge temperature changes and pressure changes, that car would have been shredded. First off, the tires would have expanded, because remember, tires are pressurized. It would have expanded to a certain point and would have detonated. Fiberglass would have been ruined. All the other pressurized systems, granted, it's not a gas motor, but all the brake fluid, the transmission fluid, the washer fluid, all those pressurized systems, they would have all blown up. The huge temperature changes would have spiderwebbed those windows. The main front windshield would have been spiderwebbed for first. The side windshields would have been just destroyed. And but the thing that got me was what they didn't have. You know what should have been on there? Look, this is America. This is capitalism, right? There's Tesla and SpaceX, right? Private company and a public company. Right. There wasn't a single logo on anywhere to be found on that car. That thing should have looked like freaking NASCAR out there. It should have been wall-to-wall decals. Right. And it wasn't. Even the mannequin didn't have any decals on them, right? I mean, why are you using the convertible? I mean, that was straight out of Heavy Metal, 1981, the animated movie. Seriously, they just ripped that off. Why didn't you use your flagship car, which was the S-Class, the 4-door, sedan type deal? You could have sold seats, and you could have sold all 4 to Disney. It would have been a marketing bonanza. You put huge. A Stormtrooper, Boba Fett, Groot, and Iron Man, because they own all 4. If that car, the thing would have paid for itself. And yet you didn't see a damn thing. There was not a single sticker anywhere. I mean, for God's sakes, you had 3 full-blown HD cameras. I even had producers tell me, it's like, it looks pretty fake. I'm going, then why are you running it as real? It's like, well, looks good. It's like, what? They did the same thing with the Felix Baumgartner jump, the Red Bull guy that jumped out of the balloon at 130,000 feet. Where, and they show this huge curvature of the earth. And all I do now is I show Neil deGrasse Tyson on stage, because he thought it was scientifically dishonest. He said that, you shouldn't be able to see the curve at all from 130,000 feet. Even though the Red Bull guy says he saw it, and they used a huge fisheye peephole lens there. And it's like, okay. And I told the producer, I go, you realize you cannot see, even if it was 130, even even if he was, I think he was up there, but I go 130,000 feet. Even if it was a globe, you wouldn't be able to see the curve. He goes, yeah, but it's a more dramatic shot. And I go, so that's why you use it? I go, you don't care if it's real? And they go, not really. If it gets ratings, that's all they care about. That's one of the things I have learned by doing this over the last 5 years is that producers have said, they go, I was on this one radio show where they turned it into a call-in show, and these people are so angry. They hated me so much because they just hated the concept. It was a very rural Detroit neighborhood environment. Gotcha. And they were just swearing. It was like a serious radio thing. And I stayed on, and the producer was like off air. He's going, wow, I'm so glad you hung in there. And I go, why? He goes, oh, you don't get it. He goes, it doesn't matter if you love or hate a topic as long as you're engaged in the topic. In fact, we love it more when you hate it because people pay attention. It's like, they don't want to hear. Yeah, they don't want to hear people. Like I did a call-in show for an Australian radio thing, and off air they said, oh yeah, we had so many people calling in wanting to say, hey, great job, and what a wonderful thing you're doing. And I go, you didn't let any of them through. It's like, no, why would we let them through?
No,
we want people to yell at you.
Yeah.
So anyway, what else you got? Anything?
Let me tell you, I gotta ask you something. What's the deal with Matt Bolden? The guy that you guys were friends, right?
No. Well, we were acquaintances.
Yeah, acquaintances. But what happened with him? Like he really turned on you.
Yeah. Well, that's because he doesn't like sharing with anybody, and I felt really bad in some ways because Matt he was in it before I was. He was one of the reasons I got into it. He made some really interesting videos, although he was rarely sober when he made them, and I should have probably taken that as a tip. And because he really, seriously, and you could not sit him down. I saw him do one sober interview once, and it was brilliant. It was the best video he ever did. And then he was never sober since then. And he could not do another interview to save his life. He was just so amped up. And so, I mean, what you saw on screen was absolutely true. I mean, the producers reached out to him several times. You saw the screen. I mean, they tried to cut a deal with him, and he just wasn't having it. He wanted everything. He wanted the most unrealistic stuff ever. But the part that bugged me was part of the contract was he wanted the producers to condemn me as a government agent.
That's crazy.
It reminded me of that Steve Martin joke. When you get caught robbing a bank, make one of your demands crazy. So he goes, here's what you do. You ask for $1 million, getaway car, and the letter M stricken from the English language. Right? And he goes, you got to make one of them insane. That way they think you're crazy. And he laughs and he goes, getaway car.
It goes back to the Austin Power, $1 million, and they all laugh.
Right. Right. Yeah. But no, Matt's just, he just doesn't like playing well with others. And seriously, we invited him to conferences. He wouldn't come, and but he wouldn't apologize either. I mean, he condemned us every chance he got. And we finally say, look, just, grab the olive branch and be nice. And he wouldn't do it. And now he's out in Vegas.
I gotta say, you gave the guy a lot of chance, and you give him a lot of credit. Like you talk very highly about him, even though after all this, which I got a lot of respect for you for doing that.
Look, I got nothing against Matt. It's Matt and I talked in the beginning, but there was this point really early on. I saved the email. If I ever have to use it, hopefully I won't. Where he said you need to be on board with our program, mine and Eric Dubé, who's out of Thailand, and he goes, you do this, or we're going to try to discredit you. And I go, okay, first, I don't know either of you guys really well, so I appreciate that you're doing this posturing, but I think I'm just going to go my own way. So anyway,
well, Mark, let me ask you one final question here, okay?
Yeah.
And we'll kind of wrap things up soon.
Okay.
If you were asked a question that, let me think of it like this: what would be the question that you would be able to answer that definitely in your mind is the strongest proof of
flat Earth? Yeah. Okay. It's long distance photography. Okay. So I challenge anyone that's listening right now. and I'll explain it to you real easy. It is by far number one with a bullet. Our strongest argument, and I didn't even come up with the clues. Other people came up with it on their own, which is great. Which is the curvature of the Earth. Eventually, you have to see it, and I'm not talking about side to side, like what they show with the Red Bull jump. That BS.
Yeah.
I'm saying that eventually, off in the distance, a boat's going to go over the curvature. It's like, well, I've seen a boat go over the curvature. It's like, really, have you? Because the curvature of the Earth, and it can be measured. It is 8 inches per mile, which means it's 8 inches per mile squared. And I'll make it real easy for you. So it's 3 miles. It's 3 times 3, which is 9, times 8 inches, which is 72. 10 times 10 is 100, times 8 is 800 inches. And if you go out to 50 miles, it's pushing like 1,700 feet because it gets steeper and steeper. It's not like stairs. It has to eventually go vertical because you're going off of the edge of a beach ball. And what happened was, what really changed the game was HD technology. So before, if you had a $3,000 VHS camera, one of those big things on your shoulder, you could zoom in on a boat on the horizon and just be this fuzzy, blocky thing. You wouldn't even know what the hell it was. It's like, is it a house? Is it a tarantula? You have no idea. And HD technology, though, what happened was you could zoom in and it would be perfectly crisp. Well, that's a problem because eventually, you have a boat out at 30 miles or whatever it is. There should be a big chunk of horizon obscuring that boat or lighthouse or building or whatever it is. Just look across any body of water. And what was happening was we weren't seeing it at all. I mean, there was a little refraction here and there, sure, some mirroring, but we could see these objects. And it was happening for just about anything, to where I started making challenges of going, you know what, find me an object at, like, say 100 miles that we can't see over a body of water. So if a lighthouse, is off in the distance, the lighthouse is 150 feet high, you should not be able to see it ever, ever, ever. Even at 50 miles, even at 40 miles, you should not be able to see this lighthouse ever, ever, ever. And we can. And people say, well, it's refraction, it's mirage. It's like, no, it's not inverted, it's not wavering. We can see this thing. And there's these wonderful, my best example, and I don't know if I sent you the link, but I will after this if you want. There's these wonderful oil rigs off of California, Santa Barbara. One's at 6 or 7 miles and one's at 9 or 10. I can't remember exactly. But you're looking off, and we set up the camera on the beach. The height off the water makes difference. So you want to shoot as close to the water as possible. Right. And you look off in the distance and you see both oil rigs, right? Fairly close to each other, one at 7 miles, one at 9 miles. But what's interesting about it is the horizon is behind them. And it can't be. The horizon has to be by default in front of them. And by that, I'll give you a quick little visual. If you take a 8x11 piece of paper and you draw 2 dots on one end and you bend that piece of paper down, you bend it and to where you can't see the dots. Why can't you see the dots? Well, because of the curvature of the Earth, you can't see the dots. I go, yeah, but we can. And there's no way you can see those dots. And not only can we see the dots, we can see the horizon behind those dots. And it's like, well, how's that possible? Lay the paper flat and you'll find out. That's why.
Wow.
And people, and seriously, I did not convince all these people, and there's a lot of people that are into this. I did not convince all these people that the Earth was flat. They went out and convinced themselves. Most of the people went out to a body of water with an HD camera you can take your phone if you want, but I mean, there's all sorts of, like, Nikon's got some wonderful ones, P900, P1000, P950, crap like that. And you shoot and you look over the body of water and you can look at boats off in the distance. And here's what happens. This is where it gets weird. And I'll end with this. The boat goes off in the distance, right? It's gone. You can see your friend, even without a camera. And you say, well, boat's gone. It's gone over the curvature of the Earth. That's what we've been teaching people for centuries. Thing is, you zoom in your camera, and now the boat's back. And then you let the boat go off again. And then you zoom in your camera more, and it's back. Okay, well,
where's the curvature then?
Yeah, where's the curvature if I keep pulling this boat into frame? In fact, the only limitation, it seems, for anything, off in the distance, because people eventually say, well, why can't we see Japan from California or Europe from New York or, I don't know, Mount Everest from everywhere? And that is, again, because we forget our education. It's what you're breathing in right now, what I'm talking through right now, is only 99% transparent. You are breathing in only about 20% oxygen. The rest is nitrogen. You're basically breathing in a thin version of soup. And that has thickness over time. Over time, it gets 80%, 70%, 40% thickness.
In the distance.
In the distance. And eventually, you will not be able to see through it. Our maximum distance, I think, is under 200 miles at sea level because it's just the air is too damn thick. But if you took the atmosphere away, you could see very, 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 very far.
Now, now you mentioned this. I know you mentioned this on one of your podcasts, I think, about the Chicago skyline.
Yeah.
Okay, how people were able to see it
Yeah.
from the other side of Lake
Michigan. Yeah.
Yeah, and the curvature of the Earth shouldn't have allowed you to see any of those.
No, yeah, 1,600 feet of curvature, and you can see a massive chunk of the Chicago skyline. In fact, we even had to learn new terms. One was atmospheric lensing, which is kind of like looking through a glass of water. You can, the things kind of get magnified, because you're looking through basically a weird lens that's affected by weather and temperature and all the condensation and all that other fun stuff. And so, yeah, you can see the Chicago skyline. Now, you can't see it every day. Some days the weather's crappy. But we sent guys out there with boats and, filmed it the entire way, zoomed over all the way over to Chicago, the 50 miles. And they could see it. And, the entire, it never was distorted at any point. And we've shot lasers across these distances, brought the Guinness Book of World Records out to a lake in Hungary, Lake Balaton, that's on my channel. Yeah. People, in fact, we even figured out a way to punch through the haze during the day, because lasers, you only use those at night or twilight. And during the day, you can actually, if the sun's in the right angle, you can use a mirror and use that as like a poor man's laser. And we've done that literally at 3 feet off the beach. And yeah.
Wow.
That's
fascinating. Fascinating.
All right. So, Mark, I want to really thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. And anytime you're in New York City, please look us up. All right, we owe you a dinner or something, man, something.
Okay.
And I gotta say, for me, this is really eye-opening, and it's not too many times in your life you have an eye-opening moment like that. So I'm not gonna forget this. It's definitely something that I'm interested in.
Well, thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad I got a chance to talk to you guys about it. And if you ever need me on or you have any questions, just let me know.
We'd love to have you back.
Cool. Yeah. Happy to do it.
Hey, so Mark, do me a favor, send some of your links to Mike Baker, whatever you need, so I can put on the podcast. I'm gonna we'll probably be up by tomorrow or Saturday that I'll put it up. So just send whatever link, because I think this is something that people need to know, because you're very informative. You have a lot of information, and you actually educate a lot of people that they need the education. They just don't know how to get it.
Cool.
And where can we find you, Mark? Okay, I know you're on YouTube with the Strange World Show.
Yeah. I'm on YouTube. You just look up my channel. The easiest way is just type in Flat Earth Mark, and you'll find it. My channel is just Mark Sargent. I've got 3 books on Amazon: Flat Earth, Sky's the Limit, Flat Earth, End of the World, and a survival book called Empty Shelves: Organizing Your Corner of an American Apocalypse. The documentary is called Behind the Curve, which is on Netflix. It's been on there, very, very easy to find, but you can find it. It's all over the place. And I have a podcast on TFR and other things, but I sent you some links, check it out. And the thing I want to end your audience is, don't take my word, all these things I said as gospel. Do your own research, figure it out for yourself. I'm not here to convince you or persuade you. I'm just here to put things in your head and let you deal with it.
Great. Question everything, right?
Yep. Question everything.
Question everything. Thank you hey, Mark, again, thank you for being a guest. This is huge. I'm marking out right now. I'm totally bugging out.
Thanks, guys.
After seeing you. So thank you for everything. And hopefully we'll talk in the future. I hope you a lot of success and whatever you got to do, man. Thank you for everything.
All right.
We'll be in touch, Mark.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.